Hello, I'm here today in Jerusalem on the first day of my sabbatical visit to the Holy Land. And I'm here in Jerusalem and on the hills behind the old city. And if I look over there, you can just about see the domes and minarets of the old city. You can see the Golden Dome on Temple Mount, and you can see the spire of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, places so famous in world history. But I'm here at the British and Commonwealth War Graves Cemetery. And like all cemeteries, like those perhaps we're more familiar with from the Western Front, this cemetery is immaculately kept. I don't know how they keep the grass green. And it's all beautifully ordered, and there are lovely olive trees growing, and a huge war memorial for those who have no grave at the top behind the traditional altar of remembrance. It's a very, as always, coming to these sorts of places, it's a very moving experience to see these countless graves and to look at the inscriptions and especially the ages of the young men buried here. Men who come from across the world. But I'm here to visit one specific grave, and that's this one here. And it's the grave of somebody I sort of feel I know, Clifford Coates Morrell. And I'm here to visit this grave and to visit Clifford's grave because Clifford was a worshipper at Putney Methodist Church, and his name appears on our war memorial, and it's one that we read out each year on Remembrance Sunday. And recently, David, one of our organists, did a lot of research on our war memorial, and he brought the names to life by adding details about their lives. And when I knew I was coming to Jerusalem and I realised this was where Clifford was buried, I vowed that I would pay a pastoral visit to him as a member of my congregation, so to speak. Now, we know a little bit about Clifford, but not a great deal. He served in the Royal Bucks Infantry, and his mother and father and he grew up in Putney, and they lived in Mexfield Road, which is not too far from Wandsworth Park, where his father was a painter and decorator. Clifford, like all of those buried here, served in the Palestine campaign of the First World War, one of the less well-known campaigns. So much of our attention, of course, is focused on the Western Front and the Somme and Ypres. And we sometimes have, if we think about it at all, have a rather romantic image of the Palestine campaign. And we think of Lawrence of Arabia and flowing robes and dashing across the desert on a camel. But it was actually a very bloody and very brutal campaign, with both Commonwealth forces and the Turkish forces fighting a very determined battle. Clifford probably would have fought his way with those forces from Egypt across the Sinai Peninsula, like Moses and the coming to the Promised Land, and then up through Palestine. And he survived the two bloody battles of Gaza, but he fell somewhere over there, somewhere in the hills over there to the south of Jerusalem, in the first battle to conquer this city, to take it from the Ottoman Turks under General Allenby. Beyond that, we know very little about Clifford's life. And standing here amidst all these graves and the names on the war memorial, I can't help but ponder to myself what on earth it must have been like for Clifford and these other young men, taken from all that was familiar, men who probably had never left their town, let alone their country before, suddenly finding themselves in the midst of this strange foreign land, in the midst of a bloody and brutal battle. And I think of his family left behind in Putney, receiving that dreaded telegram, and what they thought, and whether they were ever able to come out and visit his grave. And I can't help but thinking that he and the others buried here are forgotten almost. They're not visited like those at the Western Front are so often visited. And this campaign, this imperial campaign that ended up with the British conquest of Palestine and a great deal of trouble, is really a forgotten footnote of history now. So I thought it was really important to come here today to show that we have not forgotten Clifford, and that on this Remembrance Sunday we do remember him. And to aid that remembering, I brought something with me. If you go to many cemeteries, I was introduced to this custom in a Belgian cemetery, Belgian war cemetery, you will often find stones. And this is a Jewish custom I later learned, that when you visit a tomb, you pick up a stone and you put it on the grave, just to show that you have visited, to show that the person has not been forgotten. And so just before I came, my son and I picked up these stones at the low water mark below the boat houses in Putney, by Putney Bridge, somewhere that perhaps Clifford knew. And we washed them in the Thames, and I brought them here today to bring a little bit of Putney to the grave. On Remembrance Sunday, we remember that all are remembered before God. In the face of so much death, so many graves, it's easy to think that some are forgotten, and perhaps ultimately that we are forgotten. But the scriptures and the life and example of Jesus teach us that every life is precious to God, and that none of us are forgotten. In Isaiah, God says, "Others may forget you, yet I will not forget you. See, I have inscribed you on the palms of my hand." So today, on this Remembrance Sunday, so far away from Putney, we remember Clifford and the grief that his death would have caused. We remember all those who have died in conflict and who continue to die in conflict. And we remember, most importantly, that all of us are remembered by God. None of us are forgotten. We are each inscribed, our name is inscribed on the palm of God's hand. And he will never forget us, and he will never abandon us, for we are each his precious children. Ever-living God, we remember those whom you have gathered from the storm of war into the peace of your presence. May that same peace calm our fears, bring justice to all peoples, and establish harmony among the nations. Through Jesus Christ our Lord.